learn again. So, welcome to the studios, Mr. Iluzwe.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ilozue Valentine from St. Joseph Seminary Special Science School. And today we are going to be discussing literature. Under literature, we are going to be discussing something known as poetry. This is a topic in literature that I must say so many students are scared of. Whenever poetry is mentioned, so many students are scared because it seems poetry is so difficult, or would I say complicated, to understand. But believe you me, poetry is a very interesting and a very easy topic in literature, depending on how you approach it. When you talk about poetry, what does it mean? What is poetry? Poetry in literature is an expression. It is a piece, a literary piece, or somebody can say a literary construct that expresses deep feelings. It expresses deep emotions. It runs in stanzas. Remember I said poetry is a literary piece or a literary construct. This means that it can be spoken, it can be written. It runs in stanzas, and it is meant to express deep feelings. And then it features elevated language. If you talk about this elevated language, what it means is that poetry does not appear, it does not come in the everyday language that we know. And I believe this is one of the reasons that students find it so difficult to understand. It is because of the language. Poetry is an aspect of literature that is meant for the people who have high frequency of reasoning, people who can actually read and understand things that are written, things that come in elevated language. All right, we are going to be talking about some characteristics of this poetry, some things that are associated with literature. First is that poetry runs in stanzas. It normally appears in stanzas. Again, poetry features rhyme. It features rhythm. Remember, I've said before that the language is usually elevated. If it were not for this rhythm as a feature of poetry, then there wouldn't have been anything different between poetry and prose. It is this rhythm and the rhyme that makes it different from the prose. Again, poetry would have been comparable to music if it weren't for the language. Remember, music has rhyme. It has rhythm. The only thing that differentiates it from poetry is the language. Poetry runs in stanzas. It has rhythm. It has rhyme, and then it comes in elevated language. Okay, the next is the examples. You must remember that whenever you talk about poetry, you are pointing at a collection of poems. And we would have to talk about the types, or rather examples of poems. There are so many of them. There are so many types of poems that we have. We have what we know as the elegy, and then we have what is known as the dirge. These two poems are sometimes confused for each other. You pick up some textbooks, and the definition that the textbook will give to you for the dirge will be the same definition that it will give to you for elegy. And this is confusing. But are they really the same thing? The answer is no. What is dirge? What is elegy? The elegy as a type of poem or as a type of song, depending on how it comes in. If you mention the elegy is a form of poem that expresses sorrow. It is a poem of lamentation. It is a poem of sorrow. This means that it is a poem that is sung to mourn. But then, this elegy is sung to mourn either the death of a beloved person or the loss of a precious item. What it means is that the dirge can go for a person who died or for an item that is considered valuable, an item that is considered precious when such item is lost. It can be sung for an animal, for a pet that the owner so much loves. Whichever way that a poem comes and mourns the death of either a beloved person or a precious item, that poem is an elegy. Now, the dirge is also a poem of lamentation. It is also a poem of mourning. It is also sung to mourn the death of a person. But the difference between the elegy and the dirge is that the dirge is sung mostly at funerals. For the elegy, it can come anywhere. The most important thing is that it is sung to mourn the death of a person or the loss of an item. But the dirge is sung especially during funerals, during burials. That is what differentiates the elegy from the dirge. The next one is the ode. It is spelled O-D-E, and some students will always pronounce it as ode. That word is ode. This is a poem of praise. It is a poem that is sung to praise deeds or to glorify persons, to glorify nature, to praise animals and others. It is a poem of praise. That is why you hear about the poem known as Ode to the Nightingale. The nightingale is a bird that is known for its beautiful songs. An ode is a poem that is sung to praise persons, nature, things, animals, and others. We have a poem known as the Ballad. That ballad is spelled B-A-L-L-A-D. The Ballad. The Ballad is a narrative poem. When you say that something is narrative, what it means is that it tells a story. The Ballad is a narrative poem, but it comes in short stanzas. The reason you have to remember the fact that the ballad comes in short stanzas is that there is another form of poem that is narrative. And that is what differentiates it from that one. We are going to get there. The ballad is a poem that tells story. It is a narrative poem that comes in short stanzas. After the ballad, we have a poem known as the Serenade. This one is not so popular, is not so known. The Serenade can be a poem, it can be a song. This is a type of poem that is sung to attract a lover. A poem that is sung especially by a man for a woman that he loves. If you check the dictionary will tell you that it is a piece of song that is mostly sung beneath the window of a woman by a man that loves her. It is called Serenade. It is a poem that is sung to attract a lover. All these are types of poems. All right. After that, we also have a type of poem we know as the sonnet. The sonnet. You check your textbooks, and so many of them will simply tell you that the sonnet is a poem of 14 lines. The number of times that I have had to discuss sonnet with students will tell you that the sonnet is a poem of 14 lines. But this definition is not complete. If you say that the sonnet is a poem of 14 lines, what you're trying to say is that whoever writes a poem and you count the number of lines you have there and they are up to 14, then that can go for a sonnet. But it is not. There are other things that are to be considered before a poem can be considered, before you can call a poem a sonnet. A sonnet is a poem of 14 lines, quite all right. But a sonnet is expected to have a definite rhyme scheme. It should have a specific number of syllables per line. This is why you always have to remember that a sonnet is a type of poem that has 14 lines, and then it possesses a specific number of syllables and a definite rhyme scheme. When you talk about rhyme scheme, the last words at the lines of the poem should rhyme in a particular order. And a sonnet is expected to have a particular number of syllables per line. Each of those 14 lines has a number of syllables that is expected of it. These are the things that you must look out for in a sonnet before you can conclude that this would go for a sonnet. All right, these sonnets are of two types. Majorly, they are of two types. Even though there are some textbooks that will mention 4. Yes, but majorly, there are 2 forms of the sonnets. And these 2 forms are the Italian sonnet, which was the very first sonnet that came into existence. The Italian sonnet. The Italian sonnet originated from Italy. And this Italian sonnet was made popular by a man known as Francesco Petrarca. For that reason, the Italian sonnet is also known as the Petrarchan sonnet. Remember, Italian sonnet originated from Italy. It was made popular by a man known as Francesco Petrarca. And that's why, if you do not refer to it as the Italian sonnet, you can simply call it the Petrarchan sonnet. How do you know the Petrarchan sonnet when you see it? Or how do you know the Italian sonnet when you come across it? The Italian sonnet has an arrangement, and it has its own number of syllables. It also has its own rhyme scheme. First, when you talk about the rhyme scheme of the Italian sonnets, it appears in the pattern ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE. Okay, let us pause it here because I know that so many persons will be confused about what this rhyme scheme means. If you talk about rhyme in literature, in poetry, it refers to, it is that situation when the last words in a line of a song, the last word in lines of songs or poems are meant to sound alike. You refer to that as rhyme. There are so many of our musicians today that if you listen to them, you find out that they love to rhyme their lines. They use words that sound alike in their songs. Now, let us use an example here. That poem, that nursery poem that you know, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high like a diamond in the sky. Let us use that poem, for instance. The first line there, check the last word. It is star. Am I right? The second line has high as the last word. Am I right? Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Sorry, the last word in the second line is are. Then up above the world, so high. The third line has high, like a diamond in the sky. How do you rhyme this? The last word in the first line is star. You give that A. Of course, the last word in the first line will always go with A. Then go to the last word in the second line. How I wonder what you are. The last word there is are. Does it sound like that first word? Star. Ah, they sound alike. Therefore, that same A that you gave to star will come down. We've got A, A. Check the third line. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high. The word there is high. Does it sound like the others? No. Star, ah, high. The sound there is different. Therefore, that word should go with B. And then in the fourth line, the last word is sky. It sounds like high. Therefore, it should also be B. What you are going to have for the rhyme scheme or for the rhyme pattern of this particular poem you used as an example is A, A, B, B. This is what you mean by rhyming. Okay, now let us come back. We said that the Italian sonnet has the rhyme scheme ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE. Or, in some cases, this last part of it will go with CDC, CDC. It is divided into 2 stanzas. The first stanza is an octave. An octave is a poem of 8 lines. And that is why you have ABBA, ABBA. There are 8 lines there. It is an octave. And then a concluding sestet. A sestet is a poem of 6 lines. 8 and 6 will give you 14. The Italian sonnet is divided into 2. It has the first stanza, which is an octave, and the second stanza, which is the sestet. And the rhyme scheme is ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE. Or you have CDC, CDC. Okay, this Italian sonnet is usually expected to appear with 11 syllables. It is referred to as hendecasyllabic lines. The word hendeca means that what you are talking about are 11 in number. The Italian sonnet comes in 14 hendecasyllabic lines. The syllables for each of the lines is expected to be 11 in number. That is about the Italian sonnet. The next type of sonnet is what is called the English sonnet. This English sonnet originated from England. It was made popular by a man known as William Shakespeare. For that reason, you either refer to it as the English sonnet or you refer to it as the Shakespearean sonnet. This English sonnet was made popular by Shakespeare during the time of Queen Elizabeth I. And for that reason, if you do not want to refer to it as the English sonnet, and you do not want to refer to it as the Shakespearean sonnet, you can as well refer to it as the Elizabethan sonnet. There are 3 names for it: the English sonnet, the Shakespearean sonnet, or you call it the Elizabethan sonnet. How do you identify or how do you recognize this English sonnet? The English sonnet appears in the rhyme scheme AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, GG. If you take a look at that, it comes in 4 stanzas. 4 stanzas comprising of 3 quatrains. A quatrain is a poem of 4 lines. 3 quatrains and a concluding couplet. The last stanza you have there just has 2 lines, and a poem of 2 lines is referred to as couplet. So the English sonnet has 3 quatrains and a concluding couplet, making it 14 lines. This English sonnet is said to appear in decasyllabic lines. Decasyllabic means that each line should have 10 syllables. And if you go to check up for the English sonnet, you'll be told something about Iambic Pentameter. That area is usually confusing. What does it mean? Iambic Pentameter. What is the meaning of iambic? What is the meaning of pentameter? Now, that the English sonnet possesses iambic pentameter, this means, first, is that whenever you talk about the iamb refers to a word of 2 syllables, where one syllable is unstressed and the other one is stressed. An iamb refers to a word of 2 syllables. One is stressed, the other is unstressed. For instance, in the word about, above, again, these words, they all have 2 syllables. But you find out that the first syllables of the words are unstressed. Such are what you refer to as iamb. So when you say that the English sonnet comes in the Iambic Pentameter, that is 5 words that would be iambic. Penta refers to 5. Iambic pentameter. 5 words that will be iambic. That is why you always come across that iambic pentameter. The difference between the English sonnet and the Italian sonnet is in this number of syllables that each line is expected to have and the rhyme pattern. Somebody would then ask, how comes what is known as Miltonic sonnet? And why is it not considered? Remember I said there are 2 major forms of the sonnet. The Miltonic sonnet is a type of Italian sonnet. It was originated, or it was made popular by somebody known as Milton. This poem is peculiar to Milton himself. Now, this poem is a type of the Italian sonnet. This sonnet is a type of the Italian sonnet. The difference, just the little difference that it has from the Italian sonnet that warranted being given that name separately, is that its stanza division does not agree with that of the known Italian sonnets. In fact, it is not divided into those stanzas that the Italian sonnets appear in. It agrees with the rhyme scheme. It is the same thing. It agrees with the syllables per line. That is, the hendecasyllabic nature of it. It agrees with those 11 syllables per line. The only area where it disagrees is that it refuses to take that division of the stanzas. That is why it has its separate name. So when next you talk about the Miltonic sonnet, you should know why, how it came about. All right, after the sonnet, we then have what is known as the epic. And what is an epic? My lecturer then will tell us that the epic is the king of all poems. We define the epic as a long narrative poem. These are its features. The epic is a long narrative poem that tells of heroic deeds and beings using elevated language. What does this mean? The epic, first, is that it is long. Remember the last time we talked about, we treated something on literature here? I remember telling us that whenever you write the epic is the only poem that you underline the title wherever you write it. For the other poems, you put their titles in quotes. But for the epic, you must underline it. We treat epics as books because that poem is a king. It is the king of poems indeed. So whenever you write the title of an epic, you underline it. It is very long. In fact, there are epics that are longer than some novels. The epic is a long narrative poem. Being narrative means that it must be telling a story. There must be a story that it has to tell. It is long. It is narrative. And it tells of supernatural beings. It tells of supernatural beings and supernatural deeds. It is in the epic that you see superhumans. You see super characters. Let us take, for instance, this movie that is very popular, Merlin. Go and check it up. Merlin was not meant to be a drama. Merlin is an epic, or rather, a combination of different epics. Merlin is a combination of epics. It is narrative. Check the characters that are there. You find out that so many of them are supernatural. They possess supernatural powers. So many deeds there are supernatural. These are what the epic are known with. It is a long narrative poem that tells of supernatural deeds and supernatural beings, and it comes in elevated language. Now, that is about the epic. The epic are of 2 types. We have the first one, which is known as the folk epic. The folk epic, the ancient epic. The folk epic is the form of epic that existed in the past, in the olden days. The the epic of the oldies. This form of epic does not have authors, meaning that they do not have any. When you talk about a folk epic, it should not have a person you say that this person originated it. They do not have authors. And the folk epic is usually not documented. It is orally transmitted. Being orally transmitted means that it is passed down from generation to generation through the words of the mouth. And then you have the second type of epic, that is the literary epic. You either call it the literary epic, or you call it the art epic, or you call it the modern epic. This is the epic of our time. This is the epic that started existing after the ancient epic. The epic that came into existence during our time. This form of epic is usually written down, unlike the ancient epic. The literary epic or the art epic is documented. It has authors. We know the people who wrote them. Take, for instance, Paradise Lost by John Milton. We know who wrote it, and it is documented. Whenever you want to read it, you can access it. It is not so with the ancient epic, with the folk epic. So this is about the epic.
All right, students, I'm very sure that you learned a lot today for literature in English, and the teacher has done a lot of justice to opening our eyes to what poetry is actually all about and the various types of poems. Well, it's time for us to open the phone lines so you can call in and ask us questions where you're having difficulties in understanding. And our teacher has been Master Ilozwe Valentine Okudili from St. Joseph's Seminary Special Science School, or KTT. The phone lines to call in are 08119 055 555 or 0701 863 9546. These are the numbers to call us on, and make your own contributions by answering your questions. This is a very critical times for senior secondary school students, because we have the biggest part of exams coming your way very soon, and you just took one lap of it, which is the JAMB exams. WIAC is on the way, so it's time for you to call in and ask everything you want to ask on poetry now that the teacher is right here on radio with us. The number still remains 0701 863 9546 or 08119 05555. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Your name and location?
My name is Manuel Junior from Momo. I am the number 6.
Go ahead.
So, my question is, why is it that in some poems, two headings of some poems, they look alike, like, let's go to Dash and Delege, or Parody and Satire. Why is it that in some poems, as in, two may look like each other? Why is it like that?
Okay.
All right. If
Just hold on.
If I got your question properly, you ask why some poems.
No, he got your question. So listen to your radio for your response.
The question, if I got it right, was why some poems look alike. Yes, there are situations where you have some themes, not just poems, where you have some themes looking as if they are the same. They appear confusing, but yet they are not. It only depends on how the textbook that you have explains it to you, or how the person that taught you explained it to you. Let's take, for instance, I said something about the elegy and the dirge. I have come to notice that some textbooks give the both of them the same definition, in fact. You go for elegy and you'll be told that the elegy is a poem of lamentation, the dirge is a poem of lamentation, the same thing for the both of them. And I told you that they are not the same. The both of them are lamentation poems, quite all right. But where the elegy is meant to be sung to mourn the death of a beloved person or the loss of a precious item, it can take place anywhere. The elegy, while cooking in the kitchen, you can suddenly remember somebody you loved that died, and you begin to sing. Let me use a song for example. Ifeanyi Babuchi, when he sung about in his album titled Meme, he sang about a friend of his who died. You had a guy he mentioned as Ike Chukwunwobo, if I remember clearly. He made that song in the studio. That song can go anywhere. That song can come up in the mind of anybody anywhere, because the song mourns the death of somebody that he loved. It is an elegy. But the dirge, also being a lamentation poem, is especially, or let me use the word, is specifically sung at funerals. There are songs that you hear during the time that a person is being buried. There are songs that you hear during burial services that you cannot hear outside. When you hear somebody maybe in the kitchen singing those songs, it begins to sound weird. There are songs you cannot sing in the presence of people. Somebody will shun you, because those songs are meant specifically to be sung at funerals, at burials. So they look alike, but they are not the same. You mentioned something about satire, but I don't know. Okay. The aspect of literature I think will be confusing with satire. Should be comedy, because satire is under comedy. I know I've had to answer questions about that. What is satire under comedy? That actually is not what we're talking about, but I'm going to explain it. Comedy is meant to invoke laughter. It's meant to provoke laughter. It is a type of drama that is meant to make people laugh. Now, the satire is a type of comedy. It is also meant to provoke laughter. But the slight difference that the satire has is that the satire, even though it is meant to provoke laughter, it aims at something. The satire aims at correcting certain ills in the society. There are some comic works that you will see. Take, for instance, this popular Mark Angel's comedy. Look up so many of his works. So many of them are satiric in nature, meaning that in as much as it is meant to amuse you, it is meant to make you laugh, but there are usually some ills of the society that they want to correct. There is no time. If you check through the comedy, there is this particular one where you hear Emanuela telling somebody, if you've gone to that, you see Emanuela telling a professor, can you touch your sense? Can you see it? If you cannot see it, it means you don't have sense. There is something that comedy wants to correct there. It wants to correct that notion that some people spread, that belief that some people spread, that because you cannot see God, therefore God cannot exist. That was what brought about that. You will laugh at it, but there is a correction that it wants to place. That is why you refer to that as satire. It makes you laugh, just like comedy, but it aims at correcting some ills, some notions, some beliefs that are considered wrong in the society. I believe I answered your question.
Thank you very much. You have taken even enough time from the call time, but no problems. We still have the phone lines open to 2 calls. You can take 08119055555. Hello.
Hello, my name is Jacob. I'm from Community Secondary School.
Go ahead.
Please, sir. So I'm very much happy about the teaching on this literature. You know, what you have emphasized on this and the dirge is quite. The problem is that most of the.
Oh my God, I think you're having serious network issues.
So I thank you. Please, this is Sonnet. In poetry. I want you to give more clarification on that, please, sir. Thank you.
Can you repeat yourself again, because we lost you at a point?
Huh?
Can you repeat your question?
I want you to give more clarification on sonnet.
Sonnet. More clarification on sonnet?
I don't know the aspect of the sonnet that you didn't get. Okay?
I
The
think
sonnet.
from the explanation, then you go to the homework, and then we go to rehearsing, like recessing for today.
Okay. Now, the sonnet. What so many people have in mind is that the sonnet is a poem of 14 lines, and it ends there. And I said here that it does not end at having 14 lines. Yes, the sonnet is a poem of 14 lines, but having 14 lines is not enough. If it is about having 14 lines, then anybody can come up, write a poem of 14 lines and term it sonnet. The sonnet is a poem of 14 lines. That is the first feature. It has a defined number of syllables that is expected of a line. Those 14 lines that the sonnet has, each of the lines has a number of syllables that is expected of it. You have to include that. You have to consider that. Remember we said that we have the Italian and the English sonnet. The Italian sonnet is expected to have 11 syllables for each of the lines. I said something about hendecasyllabic lines, meaning lines that have 11 syllables. Okay, the English sonnet has what is decasyllabic in nature, the lines of it. That deca is a prefix used to point to 10, something being 10 in number. Decasyllabic means that there are 10 syllables there. The English sonnet would have 10 syllables for each line. These are things you also have to consider before you can conclude that a particular poem is a sonnet. And it must have the defined rhyme scheme for either Italian sonnet or the English sonnet. Okay, I believe you now understand more about this sonnet. Now for the assignment.
Yeah.
Okay, for the assignment. Try to differentiate using two poems. Try to differentiate the elegy from the dirge. That is to say, you are going to present a poem that can go for an elegy and a poem that can go for a dirge. And then you state the differences between the two of them. Then present me one sonnet, either an Italian sonnet or an English sonnet. And the number to send it to, the WhatsApp number to send it to is 080 6643 7100. I repeat, 080 6643 7100. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, teacher, for coming around the studios today, and we hope to see more of you soon in